Before we get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that is released by GoCollect. And if you're interested, head over to Regie Collects here on YouTube. Regie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector and the host of the GoCollect speculation video, and I want to welcome you to another episode. In this episode, we're going to talk about several things, including a new arch enemy for Wolverine, who might be the next big bad in the MCU, what's going on with Morbius, and more. Stay tuned. So this very first blog post has the potential to get the screw face from a couple of Sabretooth fans out there. And I say that because in many ways Sabretooth is known to be the arch enemy of Wolverine. But in issue number 6 of the Wolverine series, we are going to be introduced to Solem. I think that's how you say it. That is going to be the new arch enemy of Wolverine. And the question is this the Batman who laughs, or is it Punchline, or is it just going to be another character that becomes part of Wolverine's rogues gallery? Only time will tell. But for his part, the blogger actually says that there are a couple of books that you may want to check out and you may want to consider picking up. And if you think that there is some magic that could be made here, right, with Wolverine getting a new arch enemy, if you think that there's something here, you may want to check out this blog post, because there could be a few different covers that you want to consider picking up. And again, these later prints in which the character is actually shown on the cover might not be a bad thing to actually pick up. This blog post is linked down in the description. I encourage you to check it out and then make up your mind whether you want to get on board with Wolverine issue number 6, the introduction of a new arch enemy. So one of the things that happens in this speculation environment is that things become suddenly hot. Characters and titles become hot because of a movie or some rumors or a TV show or something like that. And a lot of energy and a lot of dollars actually flock to that character or to that particular title. But when that happens, there are opportunities that are created elsewhere if you play the game correctly. And the blogger talks about what has essentially happened with Morbius. Morbius was red ocean for a while. People were super excited about what Sony was going to do and what was going to happen with this character, and everybody flocked to it. But then Miles Morales was introduced and everybody flocked to Miles Morales. And as a result of that, people have not been paying attention to Morbius. But the blogger points out in this blog post that there could be some opportunities with Morbius, and specifically with books that are associated with this specific character. And I want to say that the blogger highlights 6 different comics that you could potentially pick up that range in price and that are actually lower in price as a result of people not necessarily paying attention to this character right now. And I'm only going to talk about a couple of these books because you should go read this article. You should see the spectrum of books that are being highlighted. But to no one's surprise, the first 2 books that are actually on the list are the first and second appearance in the origin of Morbius. And that happens to be in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 101 and 102. Currently, issue number 101 has an FMV of $400 for a 5.5, and a 4.0 goes for about $300. Issue number 102 is much more reasonable with an FMV of $270 for a 9.0. As mentioned, the blogger goes on to talk about several other books that you might want to check out. One of the great things about Blue Ocean and Red Ocean in many ways is that there's a cycle. There's an ebb and a flow to some of these things. And so while Morbius may be Blue Ocean, it won't always be that, especially if the Morbius movie from Sony gets back on track. They start to release trailers. There's starting to be all of the excitement that comes with a new movie. People will start to flock back to the character, and certainly to these books. So this next blog post is a really interesting one. And it's interesting because I have never seen this type of approach to speculating as to what the future could be. The blogger spends some time in this post talking about two production companies that have been created under the Disney, possibly Marvel umbrella. And I think the idea here is that whenever a movie is going to be made, a production company is created. That production company has a code name that oftentimes reflects the movie that is going to be worked on. And so the blogger in this post talks about two production companies that have been created and the movies from Phase 4 that these production companies could be associated with. And again, it's a little different and I kind of dig it. I really do. The very first production company that the blogger cites is one called Solve Everything. Now, what's cool about this is that there is actually a story arc in the Fantastic Four, specifically Fantastic Four 570 to 572, that is called Solve Everything. And so the blogger speculates that this production company could be associated with the Fantastic Four movie, which is part of Phase 4. And the blogger goes on to talk about the second production company that was created and what it is also associated with. Now, this one is a little more nebulous. But it is basically called Grass Fed. And the blogger speculates that this one is somehow related to Secret Invasion because of some cows and scrolls that appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 2. And there's another potential movie that production company could be associated with. But I want you to read this blog post and tell me what you think. It's different. And I actually like that. The link to this blog post is down in the description. Check it out. So who is going to be the next big bad in the MCU? There are a lot of people that are cheering for Galactus and they think that that's who it's going to be. Some people think that it's going to be Thanos. Some people think that it's going to be Namor. And others are basically saying it is Kang the Conqueror. And this next blog post actually spends a little bit of time highlighting a few books that are associated with Kang the Conqueror. They are books that you might want to look into if you believe indeed that Kang is going to be the next big bad. And you may want to pick these books up and have them in your collection. These are books that, because of Kang's, ebbs and flows, if you will, with the rumor mill, where he's in and he's out and he's back again, the prices on these books are kind of moving around, but now could potentially be the time. But you definitely want to do your research and you want to make sure that if you are spending your money, you're spending it at the right time. And the question really becomes, when do you spend your money and which book do you spend it on? The community, by and large, is of the opinion that Avengers issue number 8 is indeed the first appearance of Kang the Conqueror and the book that you should pick up. But there's a couple of other books that are actually highlighted by the blogger, specifically Fantastic Four issue number 19, and then lastly, Avengers issue number 10. Now, I'm not going to give you the rationale behind these books because you should go read it, check it out for yourself, and then decide where you want to place your bet. Now, I will tell you that the Avengers book is one that I recently picked up myself, and I waited quite some time for the price and the right opportunity to come along before I picked this book up. The link to this blog post down in the description. This next blogger actually does a pretty good job of highlighting a couple of books that you may want to think about picking up, depending upon your risk tolerance. And just like a stock portfolio, your portfolio in comics, if you view it as an investment, should be somewhat adjusted to your risk tolerance. And so the blogger highlights some books that are low risk, medium risk, and also high risk, and basically says these are books that you should check out and consider picking up, depending upon, again, your risk tolerance and your preference for viewing comics as an alternative form of investment. One of the books that the blogger talks about that is a high risk book is Hell Arisen issue number 3. Now, this book is a little risky, of course, because the Punchline character doesn't really have a track record of success. It's a relatively new character, it's a relatively new book, therefore it is deemed to be a risky investment. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a book like Amazing Spider-Man issue number 37. And this book is not a new book. And this book is viewed as being a low risk book because it has had decades to actually be out there and to have some sales and price values that you can consider. And in the middle of those two extremes is another book, specifically Thundercats issue number 1. And this is actually a cool book. I have a lot of copies of this book, but this is a cool book because it is from the 80s. And so there is some history there with the book, history there with the characters, and there's also some potential for a movie or a TV show or something to be made in the present day featuring the Thundercats. And should that happen, this book could take off. So again, this is a blog post that you may want to check out because there's a few books that are highlighted in here that you may want to add to your portfolio. There are folks that believe that Spider-Gwen is the next Miles Morales. And if you look at Spider-Gwen's first appearance, you can already see that that is a pretty pricey book. And we're specifically talking about Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 2. This is an expensive book. Now, here's the thing. Some of the later prints of that book are not as pricey. And so if things go the way of Miles Morales, some of those later prints, some of those second prints, etc., those books associated with Spider-Gwen could potentially take off. And so the blogger, for his part, in this post, highlights a few books as well as values that you should check out and consider. Maybe there's a place for these books in your investment or speculation mix. A couple of the books that the blogger talks about is the second print. And this book right now is valued at only around $120 to $150. The third print of this comic can be obtained for somewhere between $50 and $75 depending upon the condition. Now let's be completely honest, some of those later prints associated with Miles Morales, and even the first print for that matter, were around that $100, $75 mark not that long ago. And so there is a precedent and there certainly is some potential. Check out the blog post, decide for yourself if this is something that you want to go after. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, I certainly want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. And ultimately, if you really enjoyed yourself, come back next week when we get to do this all over again.